leaving, there's free food after this, so stick around. Hey, Abigail, Hadia, and Danielle, can you hear me? Yeah. Cool, okay. Yeah, the camera's facing the crowd, but I'm right behind it. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So, hey everyone, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Ellen Dennis, and I'm a freelance journalist in the Seattle area. I'm a board member of the Society of Professional Journalists, Western Washington, and I'm an alum of the University of Idaho. For today's panel, we are speaking to 3 journalists at the University of Idaho Argonaut, Abigail Spencer, Daniel Ramirez, and Hadia Tariq. And the 3 of them spearheaded coverage of the Moscow, Idaho homicides that happened last year. On behalf of the Society of Professional Journalists, Western Washington Board, I just want to say our hearts go out to everybody impacted by this traumatic event, journalists and the entire Moscow and police community in Idaho. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. If the 3 of you would like to go down and introduce yourselves, what you do in the newsroom, and then from there we can talk a little bit about how the story broke and what events unfolded.
Yeah, I'll go first. So I am the editor-in-chief of the paper. This is my 4th and last year at the Argonaut. Added our coverage of the homicides.
I'm Abigail. I was news editor at the time, and I did a lot of the work, not only writing a lot of coverage, but a lot of the coordination coverage, which means like calling the PIOs, talking to like people in the university, really trying to like get not just historian stuff, but all of the like technical aspects behind the story.
My name is Daniel, and I want to apologize because I'm coming off of a sickness right now, so my voice isn't the best. But I'm the digital director for the Argonaut, and I was the photographer as well as one of the reporters that helped these 2 during the entire time to get photos, as well as just writing stories whenever they could.
So when news broke of the homicides, please tell us how your newsroom approached coverage and kind of what that looked like.
Yes, I can start off with that question. So I think for us, it was just initially like we heard the news broke, so we knew we had to go and cover it. Simple as that. Initially, we didn't know what the whole case was going to entail. We just knew there was a homicide that occurred right off campus. We didn't know how many people involved. We didn't know it necessarily was a murder. So for us, the instinct was we have to go there straight away. We were some of the first reporters on the scene, and probably the second, first people that got keys out on it. I wouldn't say it's different from our normal day-to-day coverage starting off. But once we kind of realized the magnitude of everything, we had to come up with a game plan of how we were going to be covering this, especially when we were short-staffed already.
Yeah, I think definitely coming off of like a short staff, we were very short staffed to come out of this. I was the only, coming into this, I was the only like writing news writer, doing the editor. Daniel and Claudia wrote things from time to time, but I was the only really like standard news writer. And so coming into this and just being like, I cannot do this one man band all by myself. And really trying to get into working as a team and figuring out what each person was going to do and how we were going to be able to cover it. Because we also had never covered anything like this before.
And to kind of like cap it off, it was kind of just like surreal as a student because Moscow is a very safe town. Like the last murder was like 7 years ago. So it was just like, for us to receive a notification saying there's a homicide, I was like, oh, this is interesting. So I just headed out, started kind of asking questions to the local police, and then just kind of waited for more news and just kind of followed the story from there on.
Yeah, and honestly, overall, I think we all had this sense of urgency off the bat before we knew the magnitude of it. That, if something is a little off, it feels like people are feeling unsafe. We need to figure out what's happening so we can get that information out to our community. And it did get to the point where we were hearing rumors, that there were 4 people murdered, but we couldn't confirm that, so we couldn't put that information out. But for us, it was a sense of urgency where we started to realize the police weren't being fully clear about how safe everyone was. Because within the initial day, they had said within an hour of the first vandal alert that was sent to students telling them to stay indoors, another one was sent out saying that they did not have to stay inside. But as the day continued on, we realized something felt off about that.
It was really the use of social media and stuff like that really kind of showed us what the community as well as the campus as a whole learned knew. They're the first ones that said there was 4 people. It was 4 people. The number 4 kept coming on and on and on, and that's kind of what led us to be off. Homicide is often times a one kind of situation. So for us, trying to get in contact with the police and then getting no information, it kind of just delayed how quickly the information got to the people.
Yeah, speaking on Yik-Yak, I think all 3 of us, especially when I was actively writing, I just had Yik-Yak open on my phone and was constantly hitting refresh. Just that was where we were getting information, but also some of it was true and some of it wasn't. And that's really kind of the case with that, all of the social media coverage, all of the social media things we've seen throughout the whole case. We were hearing in the first 24 hours, we were hearing stabbing, but we were also hearing gun, firearm, we were hearing about fentanyl, we were hearing a bunch of different things, and because the police were not giving out a ton of information, it was really hard for us to tell what was real and what wasn't.
Yeah, and I think another part of that too is obviously the rumor mill of social media, people hear things, there's some truth to it, but there's no way to confirm it. At the same time too, there was actual legitimate news coverage that was inaccurate. I believe within the first day, PBS had put out an article comparing us to shootings that had happened at another university campus, saying it's 2 examples of gun violence, when we didn't even know whether it was a murder at that point. So things like that, being there, being the ones on the scene, it was really easy to see those inaccuracies, but it was concerning to see what other people were reading, where they wouldn't know any better.
And to add more to that, it's just that lack of information from the get-go helped fuel a lot of these rumors that we see on other news organizations like News Nation, Fox, stuff like that, and PBS too, because it's kind of concerning where PBS is saying that this is shooting death, that they were all shot to death. When no one in the town, the local paper, the Moscow Daily News didn't know, we didn't know, the Spokesman Review didn't know. How are you confidently saying that to a national audience? And I think from the get-go, this case in itself just led itself to just a bunch of rumors that were unfounded and potentially dangerous.
Another question for all of you is, in the months that followed when a little bit more information came out, the confirmed number of victims and all the rest, how did you, arguably the journalist closest to what happened as being part of the University of Idaho community, how did you work to maintain public trust when media outlets from all over the country were coming into the small town of Moscow, Idaho, and kind of maybe putting into question the reputation of the journalist community?
I think for me, it really came to relying on the fact that we had already built a lot of those relationships, and using those relationships we had already built. For example, the PIO of Moscow Police Department is someone who, even before all this started, already knew who I was and knew that I would be calling for the art governor. And had a lot of, and so of course they were familiar with my work, they were familiar with me as a person. And I think that also really helped when we began to reach out to people like the student government the student government organization and other people on campus, like the dean of students. They already knew who we were, and they were familiar with the kind of work we did. And so they already trusted us to some extent. They already knew that we were in it for the right reason.
Yeah, I think like everyone was saying, a lot of it's just pre-built relationships we already had. And the fact that we are students, they understand, like, not only are we also community members, we are in the University of Idaho. And that is something where these aren't just random, people to us, that random victims, these were our peers. I think that was a large part of having that trust. And also just the idea that, we already have established relationship because we're not going anywhere. We're not just coming in to cover this and we're not going to leave. We are still here and we still are going to continue to be here. I think that was a big level of trust for people. But at the same time, it did make for difficult situations when people couldn't distinguish us from the national media. For example, I went onto campus to try to do some street interviews, and students reacted quite negatively when in the past when I've done street interviews on campus, it hasn't been difficult to talk to people. Everyone was just on edge, so in those rounds it was hard to talk to students, and still has been.
And to add more onto that is that this trust that we have with the community has been tarnished. And it's not a fault of our own, it's not a fault of like anyone else locally, it's a lot of the national reporters that kind of treated this town as like, just as like as a toy in reality. A lot of people, even in like in our student government, a lot of them are like, can we stop interview? Like, can we not use that? Like, I'm sorry, no, I'm not trusting you guys anymore. And it's just like, it hurts in a way because like I know these guys, I've had classes with these guys, I cover them every week. And for them to say like, hey, like I kind of don't trust me at the moment, it kind of hurts because it's just like, great, 3 years, 4 years, for some of us, it's like all these relationships we've had just out the window because of how poorly the media has treated. And it makes it difficult to do more stories. Because a lot of people like who would say yes back in the day are saying no now because they're like, I got mistreated on Fox. I was ambushed by people from Fox or News Nation, stuff like that. So it just made it incredibly difficult just to reconnect with the community. And I feel like change coming up in June with the hearing coming up, that's going to be the same wound reopened but widened.
So the other day, Hadia mentioned some frustration with people kind of patronizing you all and not taking you seriously as journalists when in reality you were arguably the most qualified to cover this because you were also students at the university at the time. So could you please talk a little bit about that and how we worked to uphold your reputation as journalists and avoid being kind of patronized or like treated like students who didn't know anything?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that question, Ellen. I think a big part of it is that national media saw us as a very accessible source for students because they come to us, offering an interview, but then when it comes down to it, they're not talking to us like we're journalists. Because what they want to hear is, oh, we need the police department, their communication is horrible, and they want us to also say, I feel scared, I feel sad. They are not coming to us to actually get a reality of what the situation is, but they want us to paint this other picture that is just bleak, rather than talk about the realities of the situation. I think that was really frustrating, and at certain points we have become more aware and understanding of what kind of red flags we saw when people would reach out to us, whether they're being genuine or not, what kind of angle they want to talk about. Because some people come off really genuinely, and you can easily tell that they do have good intentions. Sometimes you can't tell at all. We definitely started turning down interviews where they wanted to talk to the students, because that's not what this is. We have been covering this from day one. spending the whole day in and out of the newsroom that whole week. We were running classes. So it's quite condescending to be approached as students when we're working on this.
Yeah, like I had, the worst part was like when they came to us and were like, we want to talk to you as journalists. And then the questions they asked were not the questions you would ask a correspondent. And so it was really, I just felt really fooled by it, like at the end of the day. And it made definitely me feel like really gross about some of the things that they said. And so it just kind of, like, it made me like trust them less. And so it made me really empathetic to them when other people said they didn't trust the media because the same thing happened to us. So.
And a lot of our goals, I will say, from like the get-go, because we've been on CNN, we've been on Fox, we've been on, figure out what other ones, Inside Edition, and stuff like that. Our main goal was to kind of set the record straight. And that's what we said from the beginning. That like, there are a lot of rumors, there's a lot of misinformation out there. Our goal was to be, hey, we live here. We shop in the, we shop at the, we know what's going on in the community. Let us tell you what the facts are. And coming in, these media outlets would come in and interview us. That was what our goal was. But then it turned to the fact that like, oh, students are saying no to us. Hey, we can't have any students talk to us. And it's like, hey, let's talk to the student newspaper. It's like a way to have it in, essentially. And it got to the point where it was just like, they wanted that clickbait. That's all they wanted. And yeah, that's as you said. Like we've turned out interviews with like Cooper Anderson, like we want to talk to us as a student, but you have to stand with your beliefs and ethics and say, like, I'm a journalist, I'm a reporter. I'll talk to you as a reporter, like an equal, and they don't care.
Yeah, and adding on to that, I think we definitely each did interviews that we ended up regretting after the fact. One that particularly stands out to me is one where they came in to film us. They asked us to come in pretty early in the day, like 7 or 8. They interviewed Dana first, and quite simply, this is a story of like being a woman in journalism, I will say. They interviewed Dana first, they asked him the hard-hitting questions, which at the time Dana was just a reporter on this. Abigail is his editor, I am the editor-in-chief. They asked him first, then they come and approach me after, and they're like, okay, so who's gonna interview you? You're Abigail. And I'm like, what do you mean? Oh, we only need one female voice for this piece. So at that point, I wish I shut down the interview at that point, but I didn't. Abigail went on and did the interview, but there's just instances like that where obviously they don't care for one, and it just really demoralizing when the reality is, yeah, Abigail is Daniel's boss at the time, and they're asking us questions, how do you feel about this? They're not taking us seriously. I think that was an overarching issue, and the sexism in that case in particular was just like shocking. People can approach you really friendly, but they don't have the pure intent behind it. So instances like that happen. They can be nice to your face, but then at the same time, they're thinking, okay, one of 2 female voices, we'll just use one of them.
So what you mentioned, what were other challenges you ran into having the story of media as journalists?
One of the big things that frustrated me a lot was once the national media came into town, a lot of times they would get answers that we wouldn't get because they would be like, I'm with ABC, you should tell me things. But when they were talking to us, they'd be like, they wouldn't feel as like pressure to give us answers. And that really sucked because we got scooped by people in our own backyard when we had literally called that same source 5 minutes earlier. And that was really frustrating to like watch it happen.
And I think some of the issues we ran into were continuations of issues we've had in the past. Because once again, with the Moscow Police Department, everyone nationally critiquing their communications, that has been an issue as long as I've been up the Argonaut. It's been very hard to get follow-ups to stories, to get answers from them. So issues like that, it wasn't new to us. Trying to like schedule interviews with the university and not being difficult about it, it wasn't new. It was all kind of the same old stuff we've dealt with in Moscow, but we just knew to expect it.
Another thing to add onto that is just kind of, this is kind of my personal belief, not the Argonauts, but like, it shows the true character of a lot of elected in small communities like this. The coroner specifically, that was the worst example I've ever seen, where she releases a one-page document of the autopsy report, then the next day, the bloodiest crime scene I've seen in my 16 years. They were stabbed multiple times, and this one-page autopsy report she released the day before was just the barest of bones, like, oh, stabbing, this is their age, this is their sex, that's it. And it truly is just gross how they will just use opportunities like this to talk to a more national or global media, but just to get famous from it.
To the audience for questions, I just wanted to ask each of you if there's one thing you wish the public knew or something along those lines that you'd like more people to know about the work that you've done and continue to do for this case.
I guess I can start with that one. I guess one thing I wish the public knew, just pertaining to the case as a whole, is, when you're there, like in person, when you're actually there, like the town, seeing the like true crime coverage of it is just a really different perspective. I've seen a lot of criticisms online, like why are people in Moscow complaining about the media? It's good, it's helping the case. But at the same time, that stuff can be harmful and it really impacts real people. And I don't think people understand that, it was legitimately harming people on our staff, people that were trying to interview, and it closed off a lot of sources, I would say, like people on Greek Road, students that living in the area, they weren't willing to talk to us, let alone national media at that point. So I wish people kind of understood, like, there's just further reaching consequences for a lot of this coverage.
Yeah, I will say my one thing is that it's that like a lot of people, even when like national news coverage is like Moscow's a very small town, I don't think people really get that like you are only ever 1 or 2 degrees of separation away from anyone. Like none of us knew the victims personally, but one of my classmates who like I talk to very regularly was like best friends with one of them. And you can't get more than 2 degrees of separation away from anyone. And so even if it's like, oh, I never knew them personally, it still affected everyone in the town. And so everyone still is like very close up to the media. They're still very much feeling the effects, even if they weren't directly involved.
And I guess my thought is, this isn't good for the community itself, but for just everyone who's a media person. The fact is that these are human beings. These people have lives, these people have like hearts and stuff like that. It's unfair to see them treated just like garbage in reality. I keep saying Fox, but just look at their coverage. One of the things they put out today, I think it's like Brian coworkers, Walmart are hit with another death. It's just like, these are people. Treat them like people, be human. Anything. So.
Okay, so we've got some student journalists, or just journalists in the audience today, and then we got some people from the region, and gonna open it up for questions, and then maybe from there, if there's anything else, you can have more of a conversation. So yeah, okay. What I'll go ahead and do is like, you can say the question and I'll put it on the mic so that we make sure they hear. Okay, right there.
We also planted for police homicides and stuff. And we made an opportunity to like ask the Stanford if we did that and how.
Yeah, so one question from a reporter from the Daily Evergreen at WSU was how your interactions with families of the victims was, and were you able to contact them? If so, how did you navigate that?
I'll take this one because this was kind of my editorial decision. We actually, I made this call, and this is actually a call I kind of regret making, that I did not immediately try and contact the families. My feeling was pretty succinctly that I didn't want to be another voice trying to contact them, especially since like, these are regular people with no media training. They have no way to tell who's genuine and who's not. And I didn't want to be just another voice screaming at them, asking them for comment. Which I think then eventually led to us, when we did decide to try and contact them, having a hard time getting in touch with them.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, and also I to the Daily Evergreen to see you guys out here. I think, yeah, we learned from our mistakes and stuff. I do think we waited too long to reach out, because by the time we did, people were already parachuting in from around the country, and it was really hard to get a hold of them. And now, like with the gag order, and of course, with the families being a lot higher, it's been quite difficult to reach out to them. But we've been trying to do different avenues, whether through the university, or like through attorneys. But we haven't had the best of luck with that stuff, and I think it's because of our initial mistakes there.
Thanks. I was wondering, obviously this event has caused a lot of rifts between, as you said, the journalism team, your journalism team, and the campus at large, the student government, that kind of thing. What steps are you planning on taking to mend those relationships, and what steps do you think other student journalists can take to maintain good relationships with student government and the student body at large?
I can take that one. So a lot of it is just coming to them straight as a human. I tried working on the obituaries a month ago, and it's just been a really rough, just real rough time where some of the people from student government have asked, like, I don't want to be involved, I'll talk to you, I don't want to be quoted, I don't want to be sourced, anything like that. A lot of it is just going up to them in person, just saying like, hey, I'm sorry, like I have to bring this up again, but can I talk to you about it? And a lot of times that got me a lot further than just sending an email or a text, right? It's like human interaction that is helping to amend it, because people can see who you are and what your intentions are. From there, they can say no. It's a lot easier to do that in person than over an email, or it's just words on a screen, you know?
Yeah, if I can add on to that, I think part of it too is like our previous like reputation building. I think that helped us out a lot because there were sources that already knew us because we had interviewed their friends, or they simply were aware that our content would be done in the past. I think that really opened up some doors for us to the people that did trust us in the community. They already knew that we've been here. So it's not like we're suddenly trying to dive into something, like stick our noses into someone's business. We've already been there. We are a part of it already. And I think that was helpful. And the most you can do really always just approach people from a genuine angle with the correct intent. So just, when you are sending emails or talking to people, just spelling it out kind of blatantly, like, look, I know you've been having these issues, but I'm gonna avoid that. I don't want you to go through that with us here at the Argonne. That's about all you can do on some level with some people, because even if you are genuine, it doesn't necessarily mean that that product is going to be something that they like. And sometimes we did see media who seemed very genuine up front, but then the end product was kind of like odd or off-putting. So at the end of the day, there's no way to fully quell people's concerns, but I think just being genuine and being real and honest is the best way to approach it.
Hi, I don't think you can see me. I'm Jeannie Radak-Cavahad. I'm a journalism student at the University of Washington. And I just wanted to ask, after this experience, has it really changed your guys' point of view of where you want to work after or what you want to do? Yeah, thank you guys for your coverage on this, by the way.
I would say 100%. I think, especially like going through these J programs, you're like, yeah, look at the New York Times, or like PBS, people who you're supposed to think like they're the national media, they're the peak of journalism, and then you see them make, quite frankly, stupid mistakes of saying things that just aren't true and just aren't accurate, or publishing quotes that should never have been published in the first place. And it is, quite frankly, it changed my opinion of a lot of these national news sources, where I might have wanted to work one day, but now my idea of them and their quality of journalism is very much tarnished.
So I can, from a slightly more positive perspective, I think it's really grown my respect for local journalism and regional journalists. Because ultimately I was seeing some coverage and I was like, this is what we wrote. It's like the same stuff we wrote us in our own newsroom here at the Argonaut. But, they added a little sensationalization. They added a little quote in here that was, not well used. It's just they're able to get outreach, and yeah, they already have that respect going in. But for me, it just really made me recognize the Idaho Statesman, the Spokane Review. They were there day one. They were already there. They're doing just as good at a quality of journalism, if not better than a lot of the national media. So I think that made me realize, in cases like this, the best source isn't going to be the New York Times or CNN necessarily, not to completely knock them. There is still value in those, obviously. But the local news sources really are on ground one, and they're going to have the same information that the larger news sources have.
And to kind of hopefully wrap it up, local news, it's kind of a natural pipeline for a lot of student journalists, I would say, to go work in these smaller papers. Working this, just a case overall, it has showed me that that's where I would rather end up than working for these bigger corporations. Well, I'm not gonna say that, but in case better, benefits, pay, and all that stuff, maybe. At the end of the day, local journalism is the best and good reporting. Because we've seen it firsthand, these bigger organizations lack that ethic. And it causes damage to these communities that you live in, and you have to suffer those consequences for their actions. Even though you're doing your best and you can, it's gonna get ruined by some other people, but local journalism is there to amend those and make it better.
Yeah, and they also just built the community aspect of journalism. Half of journalism is right, the other half is the people. That community building, that relationship aspect of having those connections, it's really important to what we do. I don't think that should be taken for granted. And then other five habits kind of changed my perspective. I never realized the big kind of disparity between how journalists work versus print or written. I think a lot of the issues people were having on campus were people were offended recommended by journalists, it was from the broadcast journalist being priceless sheet. I think it would be good for a lot of those journalists to kind of reflect on their approach when talking to people on the street.
Hi, my name is Renee Diaz. I'm a journalist student from the University of Washington. So a constant theme you guys have been talking about is that you guys are a newspaper that works really close with this case. And as reporters and students, what are some safety measures you took within your newsroom to make sure that your reporters were okay, you were okay, and as can you kind of talk about that process a little bit?
I guess I can speak to that initially. Within the first day, so Sunday nights, that is on Sundays when the news broke that there was a homicide and there wasn't too much information. We didn't really know what was involved. We found out it was 4 students. Sunday nights are also the night that we have our meetings for the Argonaut in person at our office. And oftentimes that entails students dark because in Moscow at that time of the year, it gets dark at like 4 p.m. Walking in the dark to and from the office to get there for the meeting. I had to make a decision after hearing out some people's concerns to not do the meeting in person and to switch it to other considerations like that. Otherwise, quite quickly, people weren't going out on campus as much, and it just became more of a fact of needing to check in with people, making sure they're okay, and if they need someone to talk to, we're all there. Making people aware when we're in the office, if they need someone to come and talk to, or they just want to spend time with, some of our own, they can come into the office and do that. Overall safety-wise, though, we're just making sure no one was walking alone home, that we were driving everywhere. I'll say for me personally, I installed extra locks at my apartment, but generally just being communicative with each other, I think was a big part of it. For me, was safety. A good part of it too was that, me and Daniel were spending so much time together that first week. We were like never alone, so I think that helped out as well.
And I guess I want to add more to that, the unsung heroes of all of it is kind of our professors in a way. A lot of them reached out to us. They're like, hey, are you doing all right? Let me know if we can do anything for you. My favorite moment was our professor, Glenn Mosley. He was like, hey, I brought you some like snacks and some DC. And we were like, what's DC? It's Diet Coke. He brought us a 24 pack of Diet Coke. And so we're just in the office, just eating his snacks and all that stuff. It's like, these connections you make with your professors, like they are just tenfold. That like they'll take care of you. They understand that like you're working on something very important. Sure didn't really. I mean, they kind of were leaning on us when it came down to finals, because it's like late November, finals week is coming up, and I think we spent a lot of sleepless nights catching up on a lot of work that our professors were like, it's okay to get this invite. We know you're working on something very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I specifically one of my professors was just like, after this happened, nothing else. If you want to improve your grade, you can do more work, but if you're happy with where your grade is at, we can just leave it where it is. Which was really nice for me, who was obviously running around trying to do all of this, to be able to just not have a thing to worry about. And then pretty much all my other professors were like, just get it in. If it's in before the end of the semester, you're good. Which was really, really helpful.
And I have to say, I don't know how we would have gone through this year if it wasn't for the alumni, the local journalists, and like our professors supporting us. It was really meaningful and helpful too when they gave us connections or when they simply reached out. It made it a lot easier for us. And coming back to the safety aspect of it as well, I think, once again, Moscow being so small, all 3 of us live very close to the King Road area. So I think part of it too is we had the police constantly in that area. But each of us also we weren't spending time alone. We were making sure we weren't, walking alone in the dark or, we were constantly checking in with each other, know that we were with other people.
I'm just wondering, this case had a lot of national coverage. So when it broke, when it first happened, did you expect it to go so far and wide?
I'll say not at all. So not the morning, like around 11 in the morning, I guess, on the Sunday, where we got the vandal alert, which is a direct like message through email or text to students that there was a homicide being investigated near campus. Please stay away from the area. I mean, the first thing we did was go to the area to cover it. That's just the nature of journalism sometimes. But there is no way I would have ever believed that it was going to be such a huge thing. Because throughout the day, we were hearing rumors, like we were saying on the attack, of like 4 people murdered, we were hearing all this stuff, but nothing was confirmed. So it wasn't until like the end of Sunday night where we really knew 4 students had been murdered. And Karen called the police, I confirmed that fully, but we knew.
We got the report and then police verified it the next morning. If I remember correctly, because that was when we got the first like official press release. Was Friday morning.
That sounds about right. That sounds right. So even then, like, it just wasn't in my head that it was going to be such a big story for other people to like come into Moscow. Once again, it's not, not common for a 21-year-old to be covering a quadruple homicide. We were in fact experienced with it, or had like set expectations for what it was going to look like. So I think it was surprising when we started to see like a lot of national media coming into town, just seeing them everywhere you go. We did not expect that.
It was also very weird too, because I think a couple weeks after the homicides initially happened, we had people from England, they're from Europe, come all the way out to interview us. And it's just surprising because it's just that's how far this reached. Our multimedia editor, Connor Anderson, he went to Europe, he went to Scotland, because he has family over there. And people are always talking about it. And when you heard that Brian Colbert was arrested, it was a big thing. I think Allie, you knew more, right? Something more about that?
Yeah, I mean, when Brian Cover was arrested, it was like, I remember waking up to like texts, not just from because we were still home for Christmas. I remember waking up and texts from people, just anyone who knew me and knew that I was working as a reporter about it. And then I tried to do some internet work to okay, let's find this guy's social media, let's find his profiles or whatever. And there were I swear to God, 50 fake kosher Instagram accounts. To the point it was ridiculous. And some of them were really easy to spot because it was literally a mugshot. Some of them were a lot harder to spot, and it was really weird to see just the amount of fanaticism to go in and create a fake account for a guy who just got arrested for a quadruple homicide. But yeah.
My question is, how have you guys been able to kind of create a balance between being both a student and a journalist, especially covering such a high, coverage national news case?
So I will be the first to say, I don't think we did strike a balance, I'll be real. I think as someone who is at a university studying journalism. And working on the student paper has always been my number one priority before being a student. So when something like this happens, there's just a sense of urgency where I almost like we're turning off our personal emotions and our, the student side of it to focus on the journalism, to focus on the fact that we have a community that's looking out for this coverage. So I wouldn't necessarily say we struck like a healthy balance with that. But I also wouldn't say I regret it.
I mean, I think my grades on my transcript would tell a story about me prioritizing the art, with my work as a student journalist over my work as a student. But it's also something where I think a lot of grace from our professors really helped, where a lot of our professors were also of the same mind of you guys doing real work in the real world is more important than this assignment I've assigned you. Please go do real world work, please. So, yeah.
I will say that a work-life balance is very important. Aim for it, no matter what, because there's a lot of times where just going 100% to the max on just student media, stuff like that, or just anything, can burn you out and make you feel like, oh, this is not worth it. At the end of the day, like, I don't regret not, like, easing back on that throttle. A lot of the people that we've talked to now, a lot of the students that we're interviewing for, like, a lot of, like, follow-up stuff that we're doing, they're like, hey, like, we appreciate what you guys did, how you guys handled the case, and the community talking to us, being like, hey, you guys are doing a great job. It's like, thank you for what you're doing. It's just the best feeling ever, and I would never take that or regret doing that, you know?
Okay, I think that's a really great positive note to end it on. Abigail, Hadia, and Daniel, thank you so much for taking the time to share your stories today with us all, and thank you also for holding it down for the Moscow and Palouse community through some really traumatic reporting. Y'all did an incredible job. Take care and good luck with the rest of your semesters.